All right, today we are diving into a book that makes one of the most incredible claims I think you'll ever hear. See, this isn't some novel or a philosophy text written by a person. No, this book claims to be written by the universal consciousness itself. So, what in the world does that even mean? A direct message from the source of all creation? Let's get into it. So the book is called Evolution Revolution, and right away it tells you its purpose isn't to tell you a story, but to actually be a direct communication with all of humanity. It calls itself an energy projection that's just been translated into our words. Kind of like a direct download of information from the ultimate source. And there it is, right from the very beginning. The book literally introduces itself as an energy projection from what it calls the universal consciousness. It's an incredibly bold claim to make. So, if that's what it is, what's the actual message? Well, the whole reason for this message, according to the book, is because there's a huge problem. It claims there's this fundamental disconnect, a kind of cosmic communication breakdown between us and our own creator, and its entire mission is to step in and try to bridge that gap. And to do that, it says the universal consciousness, or UC, has decided to, speak our language. The whole point is just connection. It's an attempt to use words we all understand to help us get our heads around a concept that's way, way bigger than us. But to really get why this connection is so important, we first have to look at the book's diagnosis of where we're at right now. And that diagnosis is pretty grim. The book argues that as a species, we are living in what it calls an unconscious state. We're just fundamentally cut off from our true nature and from the very consciousness that made us in the first place. To make this big idea really personal, the book starts asking some very direct questions. It's basically challenging you, the reader, to look inward and really think about your own life. Are you genuinely happy with how things are going? And then it just drills down on one core emotion. The book claims that for so many of us, fear has become the thing that's really in the driver's seat. It's holding us back, freezing us in place, and stopping any real growth from happening. Now this is a fantastic metaphor that the book uses to capture this whole idea. That one sentence just perfectly illustrates what an unconscious life feels like, right? It's that feeling of being on autopilot, just constant motion, but with absolutely no conscious direction. You're just a car rolling down the road with nobody at the wheel. So the point is, this unconscious state isn't just some vague feeling. The book says it has clear, real-world symptoms. It points to a modern life that's often ruled by fear, totally driven by greed, and addicted to control. And it highlights the pollution outside of us and this cycle of replay inside of us, where we keep making the same mistakes over and over again, both in our own lives and in history. And here's another great metaphor it uses. It compares our busy modern lives, our jobs, our ambitions, all of it, to a mouse just spinning on a wheel in its cage. We're putting in a tremendous amount of energy, for sure, but are we actually going anywhere? Well, the book argues there's a very specific reason for all this, a hidden cause behind all the frantic spending. And this is where the whole thing kind of takes a turn. The narrative introduces what you might call the story's main villain. It claims there is a hidden reason for our problems, an invisible force that is actively working to keep us all stuck on that wheel. The book's big explanation is that this whole mess isn't entirely our fault. It suggests there's a specific destructive energy right here on our planet, and its entire purpose is to sabotage our best intentions and keep us locked in that unconscious, fearful state. And it gives this energy a name, the virus energy cell. It's described not as some creature, but as an infection of consciousness that gets right into our brains, injecting negative thoughts and pushing us toward destructive actions. Its main goal, the book says, is to spread hate, violence, and lies throughout the entire human system. Now, to help us wrap our heads around this, the text makes a direct comparison to an idea we're all pretty familiar with. It flat out says that what it calls the virus energy cell is the exact same force that many religions simply call the devil. So it's basically offering up a modern, energetic framework for understanding a very, very old enemy. So, okay, after laying out that pretty grim diagnosis and pointing to the cause, the book pivots completely to the solution. It doesn't just leave us stuck with the problem. It offers a very specific way forward, a path to cure this spiritual infection and finally break the cycle. And the solution, it's right there in the title. The book calls for an evolution revolution, which it describes as a massive awakening. The key idea here is that this isn't about just changing our behavior, it's about triggering a fundamental shift in our consciousness, first within each of us as individuals, and then spreading to all of humanity. So, how do you actually do this? Well, the book lays out a pretty clear 3-step process. Step 1 is self-awareness, just admitting that you're in an unconscious state and noticing those negative thoughts. Step 2, recognize the virus. You learn to spot its influence on your thoughts and actions and see it as something separate from you. And then finally, step 3, you convert the energy. You consciously take that negative energy of fear and transform it into what the book calls the balanced energy of consciousness. There's a character in the book just called R, reader, who's meant to represent any of us going through this. And this quote from them just perfectly captures what that shift feels like. It really highlights how profound the awakening is. It makes you look back and realize you were never really awake before at all. And what's the promised outcome of this whole revolution? According to the book, it's a completely new reality. For you, personally, it's a life that's free from the grip of fear. And for all of us together, it's a future for humanity built not on greed and division, but on unity, balance, and a reestablished connection to consciousness. And so the book leaves us with this final, really thought-provoking question. It puts the choice right in our hands. It argues that the future isn't some fixed thing we're speeding towards, but a conscious choice we have to make right here, right now. So it asks you, do you expect destruction, or will you destruct the expectation?
Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a really fascinating book called Evolution Revolution. But here's the thing, it claims to be way more than just a book. It's presented as a direct message, a kind of guide, meant to kickstart a global awakening. So let's break down what that really means. So right from the get-go, the book hits you with this really jarring idea. Humanity is sleeping. It's not just saying we have problems, it's saying we're in a full-blown, unconscious crisis and we don't even realize what's working against us.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll look at this unconscious crisis the book is talking about. Then we'll get into why this book claims it can literally speak. After that, we'll dive deep into the water movement it's designed to inspire. And finally, we'll see the future it's all supposed to lead to.
All right, so let's dig in. What is this crisis that humanity is supposedly facing? According to this text, it's not political, it's not economic, it's something much, much deeper. It's like an internal infection that's affecting our entire species.
At the absolute core of this whole thing is an idea the book calls a virus energy cell. And get this, it's not a biological virus. We're talking about an energy infection, something it claims is lodged in our brains causing our worst impulses, fear, envy, and all our self-destructive behaviors.
And the book is really clear that this isn't just some abstract internal thing. It connects this infection to real-world tangible problems we see every day. Pollution, nuclear weapons, the systems of greed and control that keep us all divided and scared. Wow. I mean, what a powerful way to put it, right? The source uses this incredible metaphor. We are mice on a wheel. We are stuck in a cycle we created ourselves, just running and running, but getting absolutely nowhere, trapped in these patterns. Okay, so that's the diagnosis, and it's pretty bleak. So, what's the prescription? Let's get into the book itself and see how it proposes a solution.
And this is where things get, well, really unique. The book literally introduces itself. It claims to be a conscious, sentient entity with its own voice and energy projection just translated into words. So it's not just pages with ink. It's an active player in this story.
So who is this voice speaking for? It claims to be a mouthpiece for what it calls the universal consciousness, or UC. You can kind of think of it as the source code for all of reality, the creative energy behind everything that's always evolving. The book even suggests this is the same force people have traditionally called God.
So here's the bottom line. This thing isn't just a book of ideas. It's positioning itself as a direct how-to guide, like a manual from our own creator, written in our language so we can finally figure out how to wake up and save ourselves.
And that call to action is everything, because this book is not meant to just sit on a shelf. Its whole purpose is to light a fire, to start a global grassroots movement. This is where the theory really becomes a plan of action.
And who's going to lead this charge? The book points to a new, young generation. It says they're basically born hardwired to understand the problem and are ready to step up and build this new world.
So what do?
They formed this organization with this perfect acronym W.A.T.E.R, which stands for World Association Towards Energy Recreation. The name itself is all about purification, right? And its mission is huge, to basically cure the entire planet of this virus energy cell.
And the book gives this super specific, almost cinematic origin story for how it all starts. It begins with one person, Eman. She's meditating, she gets a vision of the name water, and what does she do? She immediately jumps online, contacts her friends, they all agree to do it, and they launch a global movement by sending out emails. It's such a modern picture of how big change can start small.
And this quote from Iman, one of the founders, just says it all, doesn't it? Since religion can't convert the devil, we will. I mean, that's a serious statement. It's basically saying the old systems have failed, so it's up to us now.
And when we say their mission is ambitious, we mean incredibly ambitious. They're not talking about small changes. They're going for the whole shebang: world peace, holding leaders accountable, getting rid of nuclear weapons, and right at the heart of it all is this personal goal: to teach every single person how to heal themselves, how to convert that virus inside them.
So let's fast forward. What happens if this all works? If the W.A.T.E.R movement actually succeeds, what does the world even look like?
Well, the book actually gives us a timeline. Right now it says we're asleep and infected. Then, in the near future, this W.A.T.E.R movement takes off and grows across the globe. And by the year 2033, a new direction is born. Everything changes.
And the difference between the before and after is, well, it's night and day. You go from this old world, totally run by the virus energy cell, fear, control, all of that, to the new direction, which is guided by consciousness energy, a world of balance, peace, and creativity.
And this is really the end goal. The W.A.T.E.R movement does its job. The virus is converted. And then it doesn't just disappear, it transforms. It becomes the foundation of the new society, a global institute for consciousness and self-development.
So in the end, after all of this wild diagnosis and this ambitious cure, the book just kind of turns the mirror back on us. It leaves us with one last big question to think about. If this book really is a reflection of humanity, what does that reflection show you?